Drones, or unmanned aerial devices, continue to be scrutinized for their use in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan by the U.S. military. The reason? Too many unintended targets, specifically civilian casualties. Professor Dustin Sharp with USD's Joan Kroc School of Peace Studies and Laura Pitter, Senior National Security Researcher with Human Rights Watch, are here with more on this issue. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Laura, Human Rights Watch recently issued a report called Between a Drone and Al-Qaeda, documenting the number of civilian casualties caused by these military drone uses in the Middle East. What did you find?
Well, the report looks at Yemen, the targeted killings happening in Yemen, and there have been 82 strikes there since Obama took office. We looked at 6 of those and found that of the 6 during which 82 people had been killed, 57 of those were civilians, in many cases women and children.
How difficult was it getting these numbers and finding out this information?
Research there is very difficult. The places where the targeted killings are happening are very inaccessible. A lot of people were afraid to speak to us initially, so it took really a lot of work to get them to talk to us. But ultimately, we were able to do the research.
And Dustin, you've said there's a climate of fear for these citizens where these drone strikes are happening. What does the Pentagon say about the deaths there and what's happening as far as drone strikes?
Well, part of the problem precisely is the Pentagon doesn't say anything about the deaths, much less the larger consequences of the drone strikes in terms of the climate of fear. The government has acknowledged that civilian casualties have occurred, but they don't give numbers, and they don't give us their rationale for how they even count who's a civilian, who's not a civilian. So one of the calls coming from groups like Human Rights Watch, but also from United Nations officials from the Vatican, has been precisely to say we need more transparency about this issue.
Who in the U.S. government right now oversees the use of drones as far as against terrorist activities?
Well, as far as the U.S. government is willing to acknowledge, no one, because the programs are secret. We know that it's the CIA and one division within the Department of Defense, but those aren't details that are publicly acknowledged.
Now, Laura, and you've gone to D.C. and you've talked with the White House officials, and they're interested in your research, they're interested in your report.
They are, because one of the things that's important to remember is they're getting their intelligence from the Yemeni government, and from the video they can see quite a bit using the drones, but they're not on the ground, and as we were talking to the individuals who had been victims of these strikes. So they were interested in our findings.
And coming back to that climate of fear, Dustin, I've heard this concern that the fear is outweighing or perhaps having a backlash, the drone strikes and the civilian deaths, as far as the relationship between people's view of Al-Qaeda.
Absolutely. Part of the problem is the Vatican has said that people live in a constant state of fear because they can hear the drones. They're afraid that essentially death could come at any second. People are afraid to congregate in groups. People are afraid to send their children to school. People are afraid when a drone strike does occur to even help those who have been wounded, because there's a fear that's backed up by reality that if you go to help someone, you'll be hit by a secondary strike. So that climate of fear, of course, breeds resentment. If somebody in this country died from an accidental killing by the military, we would ask for accountability. But we've seen no compensation, no investigation, none of the things that we would expect here in America. We haven't applied those to Yemen or to Pakistan.
Laura, what are our Human Rights Watch recommending as far as what would they like to see to decrease these civilian deaths right now?
Well, you know, the administration says that the strikes are extremely precise, and at one point they even said that there were 0 civilian casualties. We'd like them to actually come clean on what's really happening. How many civilian casualties, how many people have been killed, how many of those have been civilian casualties. We'd also like them to explain how they make the determination as to who is a militant and who is not, who can be targeted and who can't. And also provide compensation to the victims when things go wrong.
And Dustin, what about the argument that drones save military lives? Is there a place for military drones in war?
I think drones are here to stay. We're likely to only see their proliferation not just by the U.S. government, but by many other governments. They do have the possibility, at least, of humanizing warfare to the extent that we can have greater surveillance. We can take greater time to distinguish between civilians and militants, for example. But without transparency, without accountability, we can't make sure that drones are actually following the law rather than the other way around. And so that's the situation we're in right now with the Obama administration.
Okay, well, I want to let folks know that they can see the entire Human Rights Watch report on kpbs.org. Laura Pitter and Professor Dustin Sharp, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.